And this is Dick O'Brien from the Water District. He's going to speak to you today. Thanks so much for coming out. Thank you.
I'm actually not good enough to know all the details of the Acton Water District. I'm like you, a citizen of Acton, and I got elected moderator of the Acton Water District, and I've been around for a long time, but really the business of the Water District goes to Matt Nosteller and his staff at the Acton Water District. So Matt's going to rescue me as we go along and we'll take a portion of this effort, but we thought it was important to be able to have a chance to meet with you folks and talk to you a little bit about what's going on at the district, because it's a very special time for us and for all of us, really, that live in this community. We're celebrating 100 years of delivering water to Acton. And, you know, I watched the celebrations at Fenway Park, and today is going to be a big day, and I wish I could be down there. I was there yesterday, but I can't be there today. But we all have seen a lot of other examples, and it was surprising to us when we started to think about this, how important the year 1912 was to all of us in this country. It's an amazing, amazing year. We hear about the Titanic and the Red Sox, but you know, the Girl Scouts, their first cookies in 1912. Emerson Hospital, founded in 1912. I mean, you look at the list of things that occurred in 1912. I mean, we're pretty humbled to know that we started there as well. And it's pretty interesting history for us. But I thought it was important for us to have a chance to share with you some of our thoughts about how we try to provide drinkable water in Acton. It's really quite an interesting process, and I'm sure none of you want to be engineers or scientists particularly, but so you are actually, but many of you, that's just important information and background. It's important to think about water because we don't really realize the importance of having water, accessible water, until we turn the tap or we finally think about the absence of water. But the rest of the world, in some places of the world, don't have any. In some parts of the United States, particularly the western and southwestern parts of the U.S., are starting to worry about where they're going to get it and how they're going to be able to use it. And we can't feel that it's going to always be so perfect here. But we have taken some precautions, and you should understand and really try to think about it as citizens. And I'll explain to you why that's so important in a couple of minutes here. You know, some people are talking about water as the oil of the future, and I see the wisdom of that. It's really quite an interesting situation. Primarily, the Acton Water District is the entity that is responsible for providing your tap water, potable water in Acton. It turns out that we were founded very early in history, even go back beyond 1912. In 1895, the town of Acton was concerned about water and established a committee in town at the town meeting to go and explore whether the town might invest in a water district facility and what it might cost. And so they appointed 5 people, and I was really amazed. I got a copy of the report of the Water Committee 1895, which I'll leave here and you can take a look at. It's fascinating, and what amazed me was the names of the people that were involved. You know, D.J. Weatherby, let's see, William Tuttle, he was the chairman. H.A. Littlefield, who was the secretary. Francis Conant was another member. I mean, it was, you know, It was like, these are our neighbors. And that's exactly what it was. And they went out, they hired a Boston engineer. It was a big deal. He came up and he started at Lake Nagog, and he walked through the town, and it turns out we have so much rock and ledge in Acton that they were really quite concerned until they got to West Acton, where they found a farm that had some potable water opportunities. So the well looked good, and they were pretty excited, and they finally were able to put together a proposal. And of course they came back to the town meeting and said it's going to cost you $97,000 to put this thing together, and the town meeting said, oh, it's way too much money. We're not ready for that, right? So it wasn't until 1912 that the state, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, now can't always praise the legislature, but this was one very futuristic, I thought, judgment that they made. They provided legislation that individual communities and citizens could apply for the right to do a water supply district. So that's what we did. In farmers in West Acton, South Acton, the people who had stores in West Acton, applied and became the water supply district of Acton. So it's an independent district. Doesn't belong to the town. We don't get any money from the town. We don't pay taxes in the town. We don't pay the state anything. We raise our own money. We pay our own facilities. And you and I are the ones who provide this facility. So that's very unusual to see town government be self-supporting and self-motivating. I mean, it's really quite an amazing structure for openings for all of us. There's no overhead down there. There are 18 employees down there?
We're down to 12.
12 employees.
Retirements.
Imagine that. In the whole town, that's what it takes to supply water, to keep us all in water and happy with the potable water supply that we have. So it's an amazing, it's something to celebrate. It really is very unusual. And I'm proud to be out front. I don't do much, so I'm just the moderator of the annual meeting, so don't give me any credit for that. But Matt does daily. And he's going to get his shot here, so I won't take the whole time. So, you know, I think to have a municipal organization that actually works is something very special. Now, the problem we have is that we're dependent on something that we didn't have much of this spring, and that's called groundwater. We don't have very many deep wells. What we have is we gather the water that falls, literally, the snow, the rain, precipitation, and we use that. We store some of it, we purify it, we pump it, and you get water at your doorstep. That's how it works. So it's an amazing and precious resource here. We're very fortunate. We're independent. We're not part of the Mass Water Resources. We don't, you know, Quabbin Reservoir, all that stuff's none of us. We're just an independent organization that does this for our own town. We're very fortunate. We've had more than enough groundwater generally, but one of the interesting things about the district is that the state and the federal government give us quotas. We can't pump any more water than they tell us we can pump. And so we've had this agreement about what our capacity will be, and our town continues to grow, and we still have the same capacity. And what we've done is we've been able to conserve enough so that we aren't even tapping that quota. We've been close, and in the summer, Matt will tell you, very difficult. People start to go out and water lawns, and wash bicycles and cars, and whatever we do with that potable water, all of a sudden, you know, the pumping capacity goes right to the max, and we worry about that. So that's part of our discussion here, part of the thing I want to get to with you. We're very fortunate as a town. It's quite interesting that about 20 years ago, we ran into a major pollution problem in South Acton when the W.R. Grace Company was discovered to be putting in the ground things that we didn't want in our groundwater that were life-threatening, literally, to us as human beings. And at that point, suddenly life changed for us. As a small town, if we didn't have citizens around that community, around South Acton, who were living there and saw what was going on and were scared and worried about it, and were fortunately informed enough to understand what was going on, which later was formed a group of ACEs. I don't know if you're familiar with ACEs. It's a very interesting community organization, completely volunteer, scientific and engineering, mostly oriented citizens, but those who are worried about water and the purity of water. That group came to the district and said, hey, guess what we see out here? And the district said, oh my God, we've never had a problem like that. And so, you know, suddenly the Town Conservation Commission, we got involved, obviously. Then the state and the federal government all got involved, and we became a Superfund site. And as a result, we took W.R. Grace to court, and we were able to reach a settlement with W.R. Grace. Let's say that they're a corporate stand-up company. They stood there and gave us $2 million 20 years ago and said, here, this is what you have to know about filtration. You've got to go find out more about this, but this is what you have to do. And so we did. And maybe I should turn it over to Matt, because Matt is the guy who's making this stuff all happen. And Matt, maybe you can pick up my loose ends here.
Good. All right. Can you speak a little bit to how we gave Nagog Pond to Concord?
Yeah, I'd love you to, because I'm in my Lake Nagog, and I'm worried about it myself.
Sure. Thank you, Dick. I have 2 hours, right?
Sure. Easy, right? Absolutely.
Excellent. That's what it really takes to kind of answer all these questions. I'll start with your question real quickly. Nagog Pond, we didn't give up. The state actually assigned those rights to the town of Concord back in 1890, I believe it was. So they've had those rights for quite some time. Acton and Littleton both do have rights to it, except we have to compensate Concord if we want to act on those rights. So that is really legislation that's in perpetuity. Recently, the town of Littleton went to exercise their rights, and that has turned into an ongoing back and forth between Littleton and Concord. So that's kind of where it came from. The thinking at the time was that the prison at the Route 2 Rotary in Concord needed water, so there was some incentive for the state to give Nagog Pond to the town of Concord the water rights. So that's kind of where that came from. Trying to pick up some of Dick's loose ends. I'm trying to think how many you left out there. But I'm going to do the best I can. Right now, I'll fast forward to today, just give you some quick information about the water district. We have 22 wells that go down into the ground anywhere from 30 to 60 feet. So we're drawing really that top portion of the aquifer. That's good because that's where the water is most plentiful. It's bad because that's also where it's most susceptible to contamination. So that could be contamination from someone like W.R. Grace. It could be something as simple as somebody who has 3 or 4 horses in a paddock in their backyard that's in close proximity to our wells. So the shallowness is good in that it gives us a lot of volume, but it's bad in that it can easily become contaminated. As we saw in South Acton, Dick, just as a correction, that's almost 30 years ago now that it was discovered. But just kind of talking about W.R. Grace, that really was a turning point for the water district. Before, we would literally just pump the water out of the ground, put it in the pipe, and send it on its way. After W.R. Grace, we started to have to aerate the water, put it through carbon filters to remove these man-made chemicals, these volatile organics. And that did wonders for making the water healthier, safer, but it also started Acton on a path of notorious dirty water. Anyone who lives in South Acton can attest to this, that oftentimes you will see a tint coming out of your tap. Sometimes it might look like Coca-Cola, use motor oil. That's actually a byproduct of us cleaning the water up from Grace. What ends up happening is there's minerals, mainly iron and manganese, that are in the water, and when we aerate them to remove these volatiles, it ends up causing the minerals to precipitate out. And before they were dissolved, we couldn't see them. but then we change the chemical state and it starts to cause discolored water. So once we started knowing that we have all these discolored water issues, we had to look at other treatment technologies. Right now, we only filter for minerals in North Acton. In 2009, we constructed a $6 million treatment facility. Anyone who lives in North Acton, you've probably noticed a change in water quality over the last several years. For folks living in South Acton, we're actually, as we speak, we have some treatment technologies that we're testing. Our plan is to select one of those and build a full-scale treatment facility to remove the iron, the manganese, and a host of other contaminants from the water in South Acton. The interesting thing also about South Acton, that represents almost 50% of our water supply is coming from South Acton, so those are very valuable wells to us. When we had the Grace contamination, it really forced us to look at water conservation. So before Dick was mentioning, we have these state permit limits. We were looking at how we used our water well before the state imposed these limits, because we lost our ability to use wells in South Acton from Grace, and we had some pretty serious water shortages in the late 70s and early 1980s. One thing that came out of that, we made our system redundant. I told you that we have 22 wells that we draw from. That's the second highest number of wells in the state of Massachusetts that any one water supply or town operates. So one of the things that we did was we went out and we said, all right, we need some water sources that aren't in South Acton. So we diversified. We have some in the center of town, North Acton, West Acton, and that really helps us that if we have contamination at one place, or there's a power failure or some other issue, we can still supply water to the town. Dick was also mentioning we get most of our water from recharge, from precipitation, snowmelt, rain. As you can all attest to, we've had a beautiful winter. We've had a beautiful spring so far, but there hasn't been much in the way of precipitation. One thing to note, groundwater levels are actually doing well. They were really high from the fall, so we've been able to pull off of that stored capacity for the past several months, and we're in what they call a short-term stage 2 drought. That's a National Weather Service term, so if it sounds funny, talk to the feds. But we're hoping this weekend and this coming week we're going to have a lot of rain that's really going to turn the corner for us. Right now the big concern is fire danger. And one thing, I wasn't even going to go there, but it's a nice tie-in. One thing that people often don't think about is the fire protection service that the water district supplies. So not only are we getting water to your tap, but we're also filling all the hydrants that you see around town. And that's actually a really important thing. That was actually one of the main reasons that the water district was founded in the early 1900s, was for fire protection. So folks, we're still doing a lot of wooden construction. There have been some pretty big fires in Acton, but also in the surrounding communities, and that was a big driver behind the water district. Dick also mentioned our citizen involvement. I am a resident of Acton, but I'm also one of 12 paid employees of the water district, so this gets to be my life every day, day in, day out, in the grocery store, at the community garden, wherever I go. I am representing the water district. But there's a lot of folks that live in town that are volunteers, or they get a nominal stipend. I think you get $50 a meeting to do all your fine work. So we really are dependent on the citizens, both in direct roles, elected officials, appointed officials, but also each one of you has a role in the water district. I had mentioned the susceptibility of contamination of our sources. Each one of you as a resident here, everyone who has property in Acton, has an impact on the water district. Whether or not they realize it is another question, but things that we put into our septic systems, flushing things down the toilet, disposing of things in the backyard, that can impact our water quality. And we constantly are trying to raise awareness about this. The town does some hazardous waste collection days, which if you have unused medications or old paint or TVs, things that are hazardous and you need to get rid of, that's a great opportunity to do it properly and inexpensively or free. There's actually one coming up on May 5th at the landfill off of Route 2. So the other thing that citizens can really help with, Dick mentioned, water conservation and water efficiency. We can tell you folks, we only have so much water 100 times, but unless people take individual actions to conserve water and use it more efficiently, there isn't much more that we can do. We do have an outdoor watering program that goes into effect every year on May 1st and lasts until October 1st. And essentially that program is reminding people that we can't just use as much water as we want in the summer. It restricts you to 3 days a week, depending on your address. And that really helps us bring down our peak demand. So those hot summer days when all of a sudden we're pumping our peak amount of water out of the ground, that really helps to dampen the effect of that. And quite honestly, we've had great success with that program. For the past, the program went into effect in 1999, so that's just about 12, 13 years now. We've really kind of held our average daily demand pretty steady. There's some seasonal fluctuation depending on how wet or dry summer is, but we've been right around 1.7 million gallons a day is kind of our average for the past 10 years or so. So we're really proud of that. And the town has continued to grow in that 10-year period. A lot of people kind of tie growth limits to water limits, and there's some connection there, but it isn't a direct correlation between how much development and how much water there is. The final thing on citizen involvement comes from just an appreciation of water. So knowledge of it, the fact that you folks are here attentively listening to me this morning, that's great. You can go back, talk to your neighbors, talk to family members about water, and really just make it part of the everyday dialogue. People don't think about it, we undervalue it. Our cable bills, I pay, $120 a month for cable and telephone and internet and all these great things. I pay maybe $30 a month for my water. And the water, to me, is a lot more vital. So just raising the awareness of it is something that each and every one of us can do. Dick had mentioned we are celebrating our 100th anniversary. We are excited about this. Our celebration is coming up very quickly on May 5th, 10 a.m. at the Acton Memorial Library. We'll have a panel of folks that live in Acton but are world-renowned, at least nationally renowned at a minimum, on water resources.
Singapore and the United States?
No, it's not.
Well, two of those numbers.
I understand that, Dick. I understand that. And we have more than 5. Dick was fortunate that he got another local resident, Andy McGee, to kind of pull together this panel for us. But the truth is, in Acton, we have a lot of engineers, we have a lot of scientists, we have a lot of environmental advocates that are very well respected from the state to the international level. And we could have done this panel 6 times over and had different folks in there. So we do encourage you to come. It's free. It will be from 10 to about 11:45 or so. We'll also have some students from the high school's Green Council that will be talking about water kind of from their generation's standpoint, which should be interesting. And we'll also be honoring an Acton resident who's done a lot in terms of being an active, engaged citizen when it comes to Acton's water resources. Following that, at 12 o'clock until 3 in the afternoon at the North Acton Water Treatment Plant, which is located on Main Street, 960 Main Street, we'll be doing an open house, so there's going to be free lunch, some displays on how water gets to your home, on water conservation. There's also going to be a groundwater model that demonstrates how water is moving around underneath us where we can't see. It's really interesting. We'll also have some free giveaways, and we'll be doing tours of that treatment facility. Again, that's the one that we built in 2009 that significantly improved the water quality in North Acton, and we will be constructing one of those in South Acton. Our plan right now is to have it online in the fall of 2014. So that sounds like a long time from now, but really when you're designing and constructing and working out the kinks in a multi-million-dollar facility, that's actually a really compressed timeline. So anyone that has been affected by dirty water, bear with us. We're getting closer, and we hope to see you all on the 5th.